Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching The World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories this hour. The United States says it carries out a strike against Islamic State militants in northwest Nigeria at the request of the Nigerian government. President Donald Trump and the US military say the group is accused of targeting Christians in the region. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says a call with US envoys Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff brings new ideas on formats, meetings and timing to move closer to peace. He says he passes Christmas greetings to President Donald Trump as Moscow says it is analysing related proposals. Meanwhile, Zelensky also says he expects to meet Donald Trump in the near future. He says the planned meeting aims to advance discussions on ending the war. The UAE says it welcomes Saudi Arabia's efforts to support security and stability in Yemen and reaffirms its commitment to backing peace efforts. Saudi Arabia says it remains hopeful that Yemen's main southern separatist group will end its escalation. Japan's government approves a record $785 billion budget as Prime Minister Takaichi seeks to balance active spending with debt concerns. The administration says it aims to reassure investors amid rising bond yields and a weak yen by limiting new borrowing. South Korea's special prosecutor asks for a 10-year prison sentence for ousted President Yoon Suk-yeol over charges linked to his failed martial law bid. Prosecutors say he tried to block arrest in January by barricading himself inside the presidential compound. Myanmar says it will hold a third phase of general election voting on January the 25th as the country remains in civil conflict. State media says earlier voting phases take place on December the 28th, January the 11th, covering most of the country's townships. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un says the country will keep developing missiles as he visits major munitions facilities, calling weapons production crucial for deterrence. State media says he approves modernization plans for the defense industry ahead of a 2026 party congress that will set a 5-year strategy. We start this hour off in Washington, and the White House is set to unveil new details next month about President Donald Trump's planned East Wing ballroom. The National Capital Planning Commission says the administration will give an information presentation during a public meeting on January the 8th. The project, which Trump has said could cost $400 million, would significantly exceed the size of the existing White House structure. The proposal has drawn legal and political pushback. Preservation groups are suing to halt construction, arguing that the ballroom would overwhelm the historic property. Democratic lawmakers have also raised concerns and called the project an abuse of power and questioning who is funding it. The Planning Commission has so far declined to formally review the demolition work already carried out on the former East Wing. A judge earlier refused to block construction, citing a lack of finalised plans. A full review is expected in the spring, when the public will be allowed to submit comments or testify. Joining us now on this situation is Dr. Satoru Nagao. He is a fellow at the Hudson Institute and he joins us live from Tokyo in Japan. Of course, members of the American public, preservation groups and democratic lawmakers have raised concerns about this, Dr. Nagao. Of course, the White House is a historical property, and if you look at the grounds of the East Wing, bulldozers are surrounding it and parts of the historic structure has been demolished. Do you think it is an abuse of power in regards to Donald Trump changing such a historic property with no check on this from other branches of the United States government?
When we check the history of the White House, indeed, modification has happened repeatedly in the past. So, especially, of course, in 1814, the British came here and occupied it and burned the White House. That was the starting point because after that, this building was covered by the white color. So that's why White House has started. But after that, in 1992, under the President Theodore Roosevelt, he built the West Wing, so people start to call the West Wing the White House. And in 1948 to 52, under the President Truman, he modified inside of the this White House very drastically. So that's why the current building was made. So that's why if the President Trump tried to build a big boardroom, if this is useful, this is one of the modifications in the history. So that's why this is not just a museum. This is an actual political facility. So that's why there's a possibility modification itself is, of course, legitimized. It is possible to legitimize, I think.
Yeah, and of course it costs $400 million to construct, well, Donald Trump says it's going to, and is unclear about who's paying for it, whether that be the American taxpayer or himself. What are your thoughts on the funding of that? Of course, $400 million, a huge amount of money, however, for the United States economy.
Yeah,
what are your thoughts? Go on.
Yeah, just now it is impossible to identify whether good or bad because if the king creates a pyramid, if the Egyptian government use this pyramid as an attractive place for the foreign tourists, Egyptian government can get the income through this. So building the pyramid is a huge cost, no doubt, but after that, this pyramid collects money. So that's why if President Trump builds a ballroom, big ballroom, if it is very valuable to use for the reception for the foreign leaders or the reception and promote the diplomatic relation with the U.S. and others, it could be that this is useful. But at the same time, if this is not just a luxury and other presidents do not use because this facility is not useful, other facility is better, in this case, just wasting money. So just now, it is impossible to identify this is valuable or not. And so this is the decision of the U.S. voters, and a foreigner like me cannot say anything indeed, I think.
Yes, Dr. Satoru Nagawa, as always, it's a pleasure to speak to you. Thank you very much for joining us. We move next over to Southeast Asia, and a Malaysian judge says jailed former Prime Minister Najib Razak had an unmistakable bond with fugitive financier Joe Low as the court prepares to deliver a verdict in the largest trial yet linked to the 1MDB corruption scandal. Investigators in Malaysia and the United States say at least $4.5 billion was stolen from the state fund, which Najib co-founded in 2009. More than $1 billion allegedly flowed into accounts linked to Najib, who denies any wrongdoing. The High Court is now considering whether to convict Najib on 4 additional corruption charges and 21 counts of money laundering involving the transfer of around $539 million. Najib, now 72, has been in prison since 2022 after Malaysia's top court upheld an earlier corruption conviction, and his original 12-year sentence was later reduced. Joe Low remains at large and denies any wrongdoing, and the judge is expected to announce his decision later today. We move on once again, and Myanmar will hold a third phase of voting for its general elections on January the 5th of 2026, outlining a polling plan that comes amid a raging civil war in the Southeast Asian nation. The ruling junta party has said that the first 2 phases of voting are set to take place on December the 28th and January the 11th of 2026, covering a total of 202 townships out of a total of 330. The party added that the third phase will be held in 63 townships. The date for the counting of votes and the announcement of election results have not yet been declared. Now joining us for this discussion, of course, these are running up to Myanmar's elections, 3 rounds of which will be held on 3 separate dates. The first is being held on Sunday, where Myanmar will go to the polls for the first time since the military takeover in 2021. Of course, an ongoing civil war with the military rule and separatist forces, which have seen countless deaths over the past 4 years. Many human rights organizations have questioned the credibility and the realism that if these elections are going to be fair and they're going to be free. Those are the questions that are indeed being asked. We will, of course, bring you all of that news coming out of Myanmar on Sunday, when the first round of voting does indeed start. Of course, the first time Myanmar goes to the polls in 4 years since that military coup in 2021. The United Nations, among other international organizations, have raised serious alarms about the credibility of the election and even the capability to hold one, considering infighting going on in the country. Now, it's unable to understand if the military leader, Hyung, wants credibility. It's hard to see if this election will give him that credibility on the international stage. Of course, Myanmar has missed out on certain conferences and bloc meetings like the ASEAN conference, and it will be uncertain to see if this gives him any legitimacy. Okay, joining us now is Professor Rohan Gunaratne. He's an international affairs expert and he joins us live from Singapore. Professor Gunaratne, thank you very much for joining us. We've got a third date for the election in Myanmar, formerly Burma. Of course, it's the first time that the people of Myanmar will go to the polls. A lot of people are questioning the credibility of this election. Of course, the ruling junta party has said, indeed, it is going to be fair and free for the population. However, of course, questions are being raised. Do you think that this election will give the military junta that credibility that it wants on the international stage, which right now it certainly doesn't have?
Thomas, it is a very difficult election because the military junta does not control most of Myanmar. Myanmar is now controlled by about 60 insurgent and terrorist groups that are active outside the capital and outside the major cities. But it is a good starting point because without elections, the military cannot continue. There is no credibility no legitimacy for the military. So I believe that this is the first step of many steps the military should take to restore the security and stability of Myanmar. What is most important is to give a chance for the political opposition, for the political parties to participate in the election process in Myanmar, where Myanmar will emerge in 2026 as a stable country. But of course, if military is unwilling to do it, Myanmar will remain in chaos.
Yeah, of course. And of course, Ming Yeung Hlang, I'm definitely not saying that correctly, but of course leads the military junta party. Do you really think it's realistic that any opposition political movements or parties get any serious platform or voice going into this election?
it is very difficult for them to participate because most of the opposition elements have joined with the insurgent groups. And so the participation of the opposition parties, opposition forces in this election remains very limited. So this election will not be a true reflection of what is happening on the ground, but it is certainly something that is important for Myanmar if Myanmar is serious of restoring stability, security, and peace in the country.
Yes, indeed. Professor Gunaratne, stay with us as we move on now to some breaking news coming up next. And jailed former Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak has been found guilty of abuse of power today in the biggest trial yet in the multi-billion-dollar fraud scandal at the state fund 1MDB. Najib has been charged with 4 counts of corruption and 21 counts of money laundering for receiving illegal transfers of around $544.15 million from 1MDB. He had consistently denied any wrongdoing. Okay, of course, this is a huge breakthrough in that trial. Najib Razak has been found guilty of money laundering. A former Malaysian Prime Minister sentenced to 4 counts of corruption and 21 counts of money laundering. Okay, we're moving now, and metal bars have been installed over the windows of the Apollo Gallery at the Louvre Museum in Paris, where crown jewels worth $102 million were stolen in an October daylight robbery. Currently, bars are being added as an emergency security measure, and the move is part of a broader effort to address security gaps exposed by the heist. Now, according to reports, a mobile police unit has been stationed at the museum, and 100 additional surveillance cameras will be installed in the coming months. And meanwhile, the museum is also undergoing structural and security upgrades. Despite the efforts, the stolen jewels remain missing, and 8 suspects have been identified until now. Okay, this comes as, of course, France and Paris, and the most visited museum in the world, is reeling from a massive jewelry heist, I should say. Of course, a huge embarrassment for Paris. French President Emmanuel Macron has said that getting these and getting to the bottom of this is certainly something in the France's national interests. The heist itself took place during the middle of the day, and there was construction going on at the Louvre, and the robbers actually used scaffolding and to climb up a window, which was indeed there wasn't enough security precautions taken in, clearly, and so this is an upscaling of that. That's what we're seeing here from the Louvre, trying to upgrade its security measures in order to prevent something like this from happening again. There's been another incident there as well, which of course saw these ancient books being damaged by more poor infrastructure problems. And so this is something that the French authorities and the French Cultural Ministry will certainly be looking at, considering the cultural importance that the Louvre is to Paris and, of course, France in its entirety. And, of course, we're going to move on now. Now, according to local officials, heavy rainstorms across large parts of California have triggered floods and mudslides, killing at least 3 people as of Christmas night. These storms have dumped up to 11 inches of rain in parts of Los Angeles County, forcing evacuations, shutting down major roads and stranding drivers in rising floodwaters. Emergency crews have carried out multiple rescues as conditions continue to worsen, with more rain expected today. California Governor Gavin Newsom has declared a state of emergency in Los Angeles and other southern counties. Well, that's all that we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more international updates.